The first book I want to share with you begins with a story of my own life. The book is called The Mind-Body Prescription, and it saved me from disability, which is a strange thing to say out loud. For about 12 months of my life, I had a steadily debilitating condition called tension myositis syndrome that basically reduced the use of my arms to simple actions like turning the page of a book. Anything that I did with my hands would cause excruciating pain. I was doing things like putting electric nodes into parts of my arm to like fire electric impulses up to like take away the pain. Basically, it was really terrible and I couldn't use my arms. This all culminated in me finally getting to see a neurologist. And this neurologist had given me MRI scans and various other tests and hadn't found anything wrong with me. He said to me at that time, he said, "Sometimes we just have to learn to live with these things." And I just kind of looked at him when he said that, because what he was telling me to do was to live the rest of my life without the use of my arms. Through him saying that, I went and did some more research. I was using the computer by speaking into it, and I had a head mouse which I could like use to look around. This book talks about systems inside our body that we are not fully aware of or understand. It's written by a doctor who basically followed his hunches. He had patients coming to him with long-term chronic pain and illness. He was treating those symptoms in a strange way. And that's what this book goes into. It's called The Mind-Body Prescription because it's so much about the mind and the way that unconsciously our mind works. One of the things he talked about was that your body can reach a state of being where it triggers pain because it thinks that's the best way to protect you. But actually it's not protecting you anymore, it's just triggering pain. I wanted to share this because if there's someone out there who is suffering like I did, someone else with chronic pain that seems to be undiagnosable or untreatable, then maybe this can be one of the things that you try. Okay, I want to start the next book with a quote from the book. It's kind of appropriate because this book is basically a list of quotable things. The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. Now, this book is just absolutely full of these amazing thoughts like this that I would just think about for days afterwards, or in this case years, I think. It's so inspirational and so full of life lessons that it's one of the books I just keep coming back to time and time again. It's called Meditations, and it's by a guy called Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor about 2,000 years ago, and this book is so incredible because he didn't write it as a book to be published or for even anyone else to read. It was his notepad, it was his journal, and someone somehow throughout the years found it and picked it up and started sharing pieces of these notes to himself on how to run his empire. And so a lot of the themes in the book are related to like how you can better yourself, how you can like take control of the actions that you have available to you. Another short quote: "If the smoke makes me cough, I can leave. What's so hard about that?" This kind of philosophy, this kind of way of thinking is so powerful because you start to realize there are so many choices that you have that you don't take. There are so many ways that you could handle a situation that are better than just complaining about it. You have actually a significant amount of power inside yourself to just make decisions. I found this book when I was struggling in like a lack of purpose or a lack of like, what am I gonna do? And I read it in a night and just read it all until the sun came up in the morning. The implications of that one night sitting and reading that book on my character and my way of thinking are really still present in me today, I think. I think a lot of the things I now truly believe in come from that verification of like thoughts or ideas that I hadn't properly formed in my mind, that Marcus Aurelius 2,000 years ago, when he was defending his Roman Empire, like penned. And I will leave the book with another one. It's kind of a solution to self-destruction. For animate beings, harmful is whatever obstructs the operation of their senses or the fulfillment of what they intend. Anything that obstructs the operation of the mind is harmful. Apply this to yourself. Okay, the next book on my list, number 3, is called Storyworthy. This is a book by Matthew Dix. And I absolutely adore this book because there's so much heart in it. There's stories from Matthew's life repeated again and again, and the theme is storytelling. He wrote the book because he says that he wants to enliven the conversations, enrich our daily lives. But for me, what I got out of it was a little different. I got out of it the urge to try and capture memories and moments as they are happening in my life, and to kind of see the world through this storyteller's lens. He has this homework for life, he calls it, inside the book. And the homework for life is this idea that every single day in your life there is a story that happens that is worth telling. He will sit down with a pen every single day and he will write down a moment from his life. It's that simple. But the power in doing that is actually quite tremendous. You start to realize that there are significant stories that happen every day in your life if you just take the time to search for them. Usually they just pass you by, but if you take the time to search for them and find them, you get better at finding them all the time, and you get much more consciously aware when these things are happening. It makes you realize that life is full of all these wonderful or tragic moments that kind of just pass you by otherwise. So the next book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's by a guy called Daniel Kaufman. He's from Israel. And his experiments kind of crop up in a lot of non-fiction books that are being written at the moment. The fundamental idea of the book is that you have two systems in your brain. One is fast, one is slow. The fast brain isn't really controllable. It happens automatically. And the slow brain is what we kind of consider to be thinking. It's our conscious brain. I think the best way to kind of illustrate how this book works is to tell you about a couple of the experiments in the book. This experiment tested something called primers. It's kind of the concept that anything we look at has an association attached to it that can cause us to unconsciously, automatically react in a certain way. A person is told that they are going to go into a room, they need to set up 2 chairs opposite each other, and they are going to have a conversation with somebody and get acquainted with them. They don't know what they're being tested for. This is the brief. There are 2 control groups. In the first control group, this is all that happens. There's nothing weird about it, they just have to do that. And in the second control group, the person sees somewhere in like their peripheries or like just on a table that's not really central to their focus, a wallet. And the wallet is a primer. It's a primer for money. We see a wallet, we think of money. And by thinking of money, we take automatic steps inside ourselves to behave in a certain way. The experiment just blows my mind, it's so clever. The people who were primed with the wallet put their chairs a distance of 118 centimeters apart. The people who were not primed with the wallet put their chairs a distance of 80 centimeters apart. And what this proves is that money distances us from other people physically. It's a defense mechanism. We don't want to interact socially. We don't want to be hurt because we want to protect our money. Another example test experiment along the same lines is that inside an office there was a coffee machine or whatever. Underneath the coffee machine there is a tip jar, and the tip jar goes to feeding the coffee machine and helping everyone pay for the coffee fairly. In alternating weeks inside the office, a image was put above the coffee machine. In 1 week, a pair of eyes, just a pair of eyes like this, was put above the coffee machine, and in the next week it was just some innocuous image not really related to anything. During the periods of time where the eyes were above the coffee machine, a significant amount more money was donated into this tip jar. Without even realizing it, unconsciously, the feeling of being watched had tricked these people into putting more money, donating more money into this tip jar. So this book is not really for the faint-hearted. It's huge, it's enormous, and it's pretty dry in places. The only thing that really kept me reading was the fact that I was finding out so many valuable things about myself along the way. So yeah, if you're up for the challenge, check it out. If you want something slightly easier, or at least more approachable, then Ella suggests some really, really great psychological books that I would also recommend, and you can check them out in her film. The final book on my list is not a non-fiction book. I used to work at a film studio in the UK, and during that period of time there was quite a lot of downtime in between setting up camera sets and stuff. I would read books, and a lot of the time I would read fiction books. And I had a friend who would always say to me, oh, I really want to start reading fiction books again, but he just couldn't get past this feeling that if you're reading a fiction book, you could be reading a non-fiction book, and that could be teaching you something. But I want to kind of end on a different note, that fiction books can teach us so much through their stories. It's not as obvious as a non-fiction book. Maybe it's not as clear-cut, but I wanted to share my favorite ever, all-time ever favorite book. The book is called The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. It's by Haruki Murakami, and the book is set inside Tokyo, and it follows the kind of bumbling adventures of Toru, who at the start of the book loses his cat, and he kind of goes on a detective mission to find his cat. And it's one of the most bizarre books I've ever read. The reason I love it so much is that the first time I read this book, I was traveling in a camper van in Japan. And so, first of all, the setting was really, really memorable. And everything that I read in the book felt like it was coming to life in different ways as I experienced seeing Japan around me. As you get deeper and deeper into the book, it feels like you kind of reach this. It's like you're walking along the boundary between reality and fiction. So many times you start to not be able to fully differentiate when it is reality and when it's not. And I had this feeling that the same thing was happening to me at the same time in Japan. I wasn't losing my sense of reality, but I could just see these moments of the book floating out and suddenly come to life in what was happening in the world around me. I remember there's a scene in the book which, on the face of it, is the most boring thing in the world. A character, Toru, the protagonist, goes and sits on a bench and he just people watches. This scene really stuck with me for so long because I just saw myself in Toru, and I saw the way that I could just look at people and imagine what's happened to them and imagine where they're going and what they're doing. And I love this interconnectedness of people just by seeing a stranger. They have a totally different life and so much is happening and it's different from your life. I think the main thing that I learned from that book is the ability to take what you see in a novel and find it in real life. Books are written by people. Oh, that sounds stupid, but it's true. And authors take their life and what's happened to them and what inspires them and weave it into this magical narrative. And so there are so many lessons inside books. If you can enter this kind of mode of reading a novel and at the same time seeing how it can apply to your own life or your past, if you can enter that mode of thinking, then I think many, many books can become a source of inspiration and wisdom in a way that they wouldn't if you just read them as a fiction book that doesn't mean anything. So that's the lesson that The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle taught me. If you have any book recommendations of your own that you would like to leave down below in the comments, that would be awesome. I'm always looking for great new books. Please like the film if you have enjoyed watching, and I guess I'll see you next time.